Hello, everyone. What's going on? This is the Noah Gillian Show, and I, of course, am your host, Noah Gillian. Joining me on the show today is one of the great producers for 97.5 The Fanatic, Tom Alvord. What's going on, Tom?
What's
Welcome
going
back
on,
on the
man?
pod, man.
How are you? Thanks for having me again.
Oh, man, great. How's everything going at 97.5? How's everything going over there?
Everything's good, man. A lot of fun time right now between the Eagles, between the Phillies and their signing. Sixers, not so much. Flyers, not so much. But for the most part, it's all good times over there. So no complaints, man. All good.
Great, man. Well, it is the 6th of December, 2022. And on today's episode, we're going to be talking a little Eagles Titans from week 13. And then, as Tom mentioned, a new signing for the Philadelphia Phillies from the winter meetings. Before we get into the show, though, definitely check the description for our social media handles. If you're listening on Apple Podcast, Spotify, definitely drop a review there. You can find Tom on Twitter at TAlvord975. Like I said, all these handles will be in the description below. So without further ado, let's just jump right into it. So Eagles Titans from week 13. This was a game a lot of people had circled on the schedule as the season wore on. One of the biggest tests for the Birds. I was looking at this game before the loss to the Commanders. There was a lot of talk, when were the Eagles going to get their first loss? And this was a game that I was kind of looking at circled, but the Eagles decided that was not going to be the case. Start to finish, absolutely controlled the game, pretty much blew the Titans out of the water from start to finish. And they did it in an opposite way from their game last week against the Packers, and that was the passing game. Jalen Hurts was absolutely masterful. Main reason why the Eagles were out be able to do this. They were actually the third team in the last 90 seasons to rush for 350 yards and then pass for 350 yards in back-to-back games. And that was courtesy of Field Yates on ESPN. So first off, Tom, let's just talk about that. The versatility of the Eagles offense, just the amount of ways they've been able to get victories. What do you think that says about the team and kind of their projection moving forward?
It says to me that this team's real. Like this team is a legit Super Bowl contender. I think they're the Super Bowl favorite right now after week 14, I believe last week was.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so impressive, man. The way that they can win in so many different ways, whether they're down and they only score 3 points through three quarters, like against the Indianapolis Colts, they can find a way to win that game. Whether it's a game like last week where you have 12 penalties, 11 offensive line penalties, and you still dominate that football game. You go against the Packers where you know coming in, hey, this rush defense that you're facing, the Packers, is not very good. Don't outsmart yourselves. You guys have the best offensive line in football. A running back's having a really good year, and one of the best scrambling quarterbacks in all of the NFL. Keep it simple. That's what they did 2 weeks ago against the Packers, coming to the game against Tennessee. Listen, run defense is good, pass defense not so good. Keep it simple, pass the ball. That's what they did, and it helps that Jalen Hurts is the MVP of the league right now. That's for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it helps that you got some playmakers on the outside. I mean, I can't remember kind of having two elite weapons like this. I mean, you and me remember the days of Travis Fulgham being taking the league by
For
storm and
four
being
days, yeah.
oh
Four
my
days,
gosh.
excuse
But
me.
just having these guys is absolutely unreal. And the thing that I love, like you mentioned about Jalen Hurts, is like I don't care if he's covered or not. I'm throwing the ball to my guys. And the AJ Brown catch, not the one where he just ran over the defender
Yeah.
and kind of backpedaled in, but the one where he was just covered all like a jacket. He was wearing the cornerback. And Jalen Hurts just said, you know what? I'm trusting my guy. I'm throwing it deep. And it literally hit him in the shoulder pad
Yeah.
before he even caught it with
Couldn't have
his
thrown a
hands.
better pass. Couldn't have been a
Just
better pass.
absolutely phenomenal. But the thing that I love, and there's so many great things you can say about the AJ Brown signing, but the thing that it might be my favorite thing is it just allows Devontae Smith just to be him. Like last year, all these games you're watching, and it's like, all right, well, they don't have anybody else. We're double teaming Devontae Smith. And as a rookie, a little bit undersized wide receiver, like you can kind of get pushed around, you can kind of get, thrown off. And we've seen that a little bit this year too. But just the ability of AJ Brown just to attract all that attention. I mean, it feels like Devontae Smith has 5 yards of separation every single play. And it's kind of going under the radar. AJ Brown's at 61 catches. Devontae Smith's also at 61 catches. AJ Brown has 950 yards and 9 touchdowns. Obviously, the big play guy. But Devontae's right there, 711 yards, 4 touchdowns. He also had a deep shot he had a deep shot yesterday. It was like 40 something yards. So I just think it just makes it so much easier when we get into the playoffs. It's like, all right, well, and the Patriots are always famous for this. They take away your number one option. Well,
Yep.
that's just kind of having the Eagles' game plan is now, all right, well, you take away AJ Brown, we have Devontae Smith. All right, you're going to play shell coverage, drop everyone deep. All right, we're just going to run it up the middle. And I think just having that versatility, like you said, it just makes them a favorite, makes them going down. They already beat Minnesota, who was one of the NFC favorites. I guess let me ask you this. Niners, Cowboys, Vikings, Eagles kind of seem to be that top four. Everyone else, we saw Tampa win last night, but that was kind of against the Saints. Also, shout
Ugly
out
win
Tampa.
too.
Yeah, shout out Tampa for taking the Saints down an extra notch there, giving the
Yeah,
Eagles that top
unbelievable.
5 pick.
Unbelievable.
But talk about those 4 teams and kind of, I guess obviously the Eagles are the favorite there, but is there one team that necessarily scares you with the performance against the Titans? Are you worried about any of the other team? Kind of talk about those 4 for a few.
Yeah, so I'll be honest. After that Titans game, no teams really scare me at this point. Cowboys, I guess, would be number one that I'm worried about the most, you could say, because we saw it. They were up 2 points going into the third quarter against the Colts on Sunday night, I believe it was,
Yep.
and they end up dropping 50 on them, winning that game by 3 touchdowns. So with them getting Dak Prescott back, he's healthy. They finally trust Tony Pollard to be the running back one, which I've been screaming about for a year. I'm glad they haven't been doing it for the past year. Now they finally have some sense knocked into him because I think Tony Pollard might be the best back in the NFC East, and that's saying something with Saquon
Wow.
Barkley and the way that Miles Sanders has been playing this year. CeeDee Lamb, there's talks of OBJ. Now, I think OBJ is a little overrated. That's still a guy you have to worry about who had a really good playoff run last year and just what that defense can do. Trayvon Diggs, we know he's a home run hitter type guy where he's going to take chances, but he can turn a game around with a big interception that he had. He had double-digit interceptions last season.
Mm-hmm.
And Michael Parsons might be the best player in all of football, not just defensive player. So they would worry me the most when it comes to the NFC. 49ers, what's it? Brock Purdy? What's that?
Brock Purdy, I think.
Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant. Now, I think they make a move at quarterback. Still, though, what is Baker Mayfield going to worry me coming in? I know they have a great defense, and I know they have a great roster, great offense, but no Jimmy G. That team does not worry me anymore. They did 4 days ago, I'll tell you that much. Not so much anymore. Vikings, they don't do. I think they're an underdog against the Detroit Lions this weekend. I think I saw, which is great. And I like the Lions. I think they're doing a good job. Lions are 5-7. Vikings are 10-2, and they were an underdog yesterday. I got to double check. So they really don't worry me much. You already saw we can beat them. Darius Slay can shut down Justin Jefferson. So yeah, it really is the Cowboys and Eagles. I think those are the top 2 teams in the NFC, and I don't think it's really close after that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I was really, really worried about the 49ers. I'm not going to lie.
Yep.
Honestly, more so with Jimmy Garoppolo than Trey Lance. And then all of a sudden, Purdy comes in, like you said. I still think they're going to be tough. That defense is ridiculous. I mean, you got Debo, McCaffrey, Kittle.
Yep.
Like, you got ridiculous weapons.
Sure.
All this guy has to do is just get him the ball. And who knows? He could be good. But either way, like you said, I think it's the Cowboys, Eagles. Honestly, like you said, I don't get the OBJ hype. Like, last year, he was really, really good with the Rams. Don't get me wrong. But they also had Cooper Kupp on the other side. Like, it's not like he was their number one guy. He was still getting it done, but he wasn't putting 100-yard games up, touchdowns every other game.
Real quick on OBJ. I looked it up last night because I couldn't fall asleep because I'm a maniac and I just looked at these stats. Other than he had a 100-yard game in the playoffs last year for the Rams, the OBJ did. Before that, he hasn't had a 100-yard receiving game since 2019. One 100-yard receiving game since 2019. Listen, he can still do some damage. Who knows how healthy he is when he comes back. It'll be a good move. I understand why Dallas does it, but I'm not shaking in my boots or anything like that over an OBJ, at least now until I see him on the field.
Exactly. It's not like I don't even know if he's better than Michael Gallup right now either.
Sure.
Like Michael Gallup, a physical receiver on the outside. See, I'm worried about CeeDee Lamb. Like, I don't even care if they sign OBJ. That's the guy you got to worry about.
Yep.
And like you said, division opponent, like that game on Christmas Eve is going to be really tough. If we see them in the playoffs, I think that would be the toughest just because they'd already played us twice. And that's kind of how that works out. And like you said, the Vikings, I mean, I think they've won 8 one-score games this year. Yeah. They should have lost to the Bills. Let's just say that. They ran into Miami on their third-string quarterback. Like, I think, and this was last year too, they lost like 7 one-score games. Yes. So you can just see where this team is and kind of how that gets down to it. Now, maybe they continue to do that. They have great players, but I'm not so sold on Kirk Cousins. So that's kind of my feeling. Yeah, exactly. So I did want to talk about the defensive side of the ball real quick too, because they answered a lot of questions against the Titans. Obviously, the main thing being the rush defense or lack thereof. And that's been one of the quickest turnarounds I've seen. I mean, you add Jordan Davis back into the lineup. He only played 6 snaps in this one, so not a ton of action for him, but the additions of Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh, like, it allows everyone just to play fresher. And I saw one of the guys, I think it was Elliot. I can't even remember his last name. But
Or
one of the
Clarkson.
writers, I think he put out the snap percentages of who, and no D tackle played more than 28 snaps. And I remember against the Redskins, I believe Fletcher Cox played 70 snaps or 60 or 70 snaps. So if you can keep all your defensive tackles right there, I think, I mean, you're talking about like Hall of Fame level players being able to play 20, 25 snaps. I mean, I guess the run defense was your biggest question mark. If that's solved now, what then becomes, I guess, your biggest? I mean, we're talking about how they're the favorite. What's your next area of concern or your next question mark for this Eagles defense or Eagles team as a whole, as we kind of get into the stretch run?
Yeah, well, it's definitely the injuries. I mean, we didn't notice it last week, but you're missing Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who has just been completely dominant this season. I believe led the league in interceptions before he got
Mm-hmm.
hurt. Tremendous pickup by Howie Roseman. Shout out to Howie Roseman because this season would be nothing without Howie Roseman the way that it has been so far.
Yep.
Avonte Maddox, I think he's set to come back this week. How's he going to look when he comes off IR? So it's getting your guys back, getting them healthy, making sure they're looking right. But yeah, I mean, it's just every single issue that this team has had, it's been answered. You said it. The D line, we're keeping them fresh. No one's playing more than 30% of the snaps. You bring in, we see a problem with the run defense. I guess what game was that? It was the Commanders game with the run
Yep.
defense was struggling. Howie Roseman goes, okay, none of this. We don't know when Jordan Davis is coming back. We're bringing in Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh, and they've had an impact since they've been here. So the one worry I do have, and I hate to bash on him too much because I think he gets a lot of unnecessary hate. It is Jonathan Gannon to an extent. Now, he's proven me wrong for a majority of this season, but we do still see. I saw it against the Commanders where it's too much soft zone. It's too late to adjust to something. How is this defense going to look? How is the scheme going to look when you face a better quarterback come playoff time? Whether that be a guy like Kirk Cousins, and I know they played really well against Kirk Cousins week 2, but he sees you again, maybe potentially in the playoffs. How are you going to look against a guy like Tom Brady? I know he hasn't a great season. That's still Tom Brady in a playoff game, a one-game sample size. How is he
Mm-hmm.
going to look against a guy like Dak Prescott? So there's really not a ton of worry going forward. But if I had to choose any, it would be the injuries and how are these guys going to look when they get back? Are they going to be healthy when they get back? And it's a little bit of Jonathan Gannon. Is he going to be too slow to adjust in a playoff game when it's win or go home? Those are the really only two things. But like I said, Jonathan Gannon has been really good for 80% of the season. You just see games here or there, whether it be like, I think towards the Arizona game at the end, Kyler Murray was just picking them apart. Kyler Murray, when he's on, is one of the better quarterbacks in the league. He hasn't
Mm-hmm.
been so far this season, but when he's on in a one-game sample size, he can be. And then the Commanders game, that just drove us all crazy the way that the defense was playing that night. So yeah, there's not a ton of worries after a game like Tennessee, but if it's going to be anything, it's the penalties also. That doesn't worry me at all. I know people were worried about the offensive line penalties we saw last week. This team was not a high penalized team for a majority of this season. I think that was just kind of a fluky game. I really don't see that being something that's going to hurt this team again, especially with the offensive line, who I think is one of the best in the league, one of the most well coached in the league with Nick Sirianni, and probably the best offensive line coach in the world in Jeff Stoutland. So I don't see that being an issue again. So there's not much worry. But when it comes down to it, it's probably the injuries and how is Jonathan Gannon going to look, and he's going to be too slow to adjust in a one-game sample size in the playoffs, and it comes back to bite you.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like you said, I think the offensive line, I'm not worried about that. It was interesting to see every single one of them pick up, a procedural issue, pre-snap penalty. But
Before
like you said,
half, every
yeah,
starter
before
had a penalty before half. That is what is going on with that?
it
That was
was
crazy.
hilarious though, too, because like it would be 2nd and 7, we pick up a 5-yard penalty, go to 2nd and 13, and we just pick up a first down right after that. And
Yeah, like
you,
with ease.
yeah, usually you're not going to allow that or usually that's not going to happen. But I'm not worried about those guys, like you said. Be fine. Jonathan Gannon, everyone seems to love this guy, and I like him a lot too. I mean, you see, like on the broadcast, everyone's talking. One of the sharpest guys. One of my favorite interviews we do every year. He was a head coaching candidate last year, probably going to be this year again too. It'll be interesting to see. He probably has a great effect on the locker room. Obviously, stuff we can't see. But like you said, I think the adjustment, the hesitancy to blitz, I think is the one thing that is like my least favorite thing. I mean, you got athletes at the linebacker position. TJ Edwards is more than comfortable tackling in space. So I think you unleash Kazir White if you have to. Obviously, Hassan Reddick's having a dominant year. He's playing a little bit more D end. So we'll see what happens there. But I agree. I think that's the one thing you can maybe point to. But other than that, they're getting Dallas Goedert back this week, I believe, at least
2 weeks. I think it might be 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Okay.
Yeah,
But like
still
you
about
said,
two.
no real season ending injuries, obviously knock on wood, but like slowly start to work these guys back in before the playoffs. The Cowboys game is the one I'm worried about, honestly, more than anything. I'm not worried about, and I don't want to hate on the Giants too much because they're having a great year. Brian Daboll is a hell of a coach, but a little bit less worried about, the CJ Gardner-Johnson or the Avonte Maddox injury or the Dallas Goedert injury for that matter when you're going up against Washington, New York. Great, good teams in their own right. I don't want to hate on them. Obviously, they're above 500. Washington's beat us already, but you're really going to see that when you're going to go, like you said, CD Lamb, Michael Gallup, OBJ, Dak Prescott. Like that's when you're going to need
a different
Avonte.
tier of team there, different tier of players. Yeah,
exactly. So yeah, like I'm really hyped up. 11-1. I mean, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling like how I did
Who
in
thought we would be here,
2017.
man? Who thought we would be here?
Absolutely not. I mean,
I said 10-7 this season, but yeah, they're past that already.
oh my God, flying!
I don't know what I'm talking about. Kidding me? 11-1 through 12 games.
Absolutely unreal. I mean, the schedule has been pretty good, but they've also beaten and won games maybe they shouldn't have, and also gone up. Obviously, Minnesota dominant win. Probably should have lost the Cardinals game, but more buttoned up than the Cardinals. A better offense team. Boom, they win. Indy. You see your star quarterback making plays. Boom, get those wins, and that's really the development. And I just want to give a shout out to Nick Sirianni too, because like everyone was making fun of him. This tweet's been going around this last week about the flower analogy. He's 20-8 since the flower analogy, and like it was funny in the moment, but like you're really seeing the roots sprout into something beautiful now because like everyone seems like they're playing for each other. Like they're starting to really understand what they want. Shout out to Nick Sirianni for not taking himself too seriously. All right, Shane Steichen, you call the plays. Let me be more of a head coach. Like, I just feel like he gets it and he's himself. Like, he's not trying to be Bill Belichick. He's not trying to be Andy Reid. He's not trying to be like one of these great coaches. He's just himself. And I absolutely love that about Sirianni. He's been killing it. And hopefully he continues to be that guy going down the stretch. I did want to mention one thing too. Shout out to Nakobe Dean as well. Kind of got some run there. 6 tackles, led the team in tackles. Tackle for loss. Kazir White went out for a little bit, so we'll have to see that injury. But it's just shout out to Howie Roseman again. Like just continually stockpiling assets. You feel a little bit more comfortable now with your linebacking depth after you saw him a little bit. Granted, it was against backups, but still, you love to see that.
We have linebacker depth for the first time in 15 years in Philadelphia here. It's since Jeremiah Trotter, like that. And that's shout out to Howie Roseman, man. And you could have a guy like Nakobe Dean who was projected to go in the first round for a lot of last year, and he not get any run for your team through the first 12 weeks of the season. And that's with additions of Kazir White, as you mentioned, on a 1-year deal, and then signing TJ Edwards to an extension last season. So and I was a big listen, man, when it was bad, when we were picking J-Jaw over DK and Rager over Jefferson, and I'll say it, at the time, I hated the Hurts pick because it made no sense to me at the time because you just signed a guy like Carson Wentz. What are you doing? He finally gets Nick Foles off his back. He doesn't have to worry about him anymore. 2 months later, you sign his backup. You sign his replacement at that point. You don't draft the quarterback in the second round to not start him. So I was ready to fire Howie Roseman a couple years ago, which is crazy to say after the Super Bowl. That dude learned from his mistakes. I believe he trusts his scouts more. And when he sees a weakness and when he realizes what he has with this team, James Bradbury, Hassan Reddick, Linval Joseph, and Ndamukong Suh, A.J. Brown, talk about helping the development of your young quarterback. Yeah, some GMs would be confident and complacent and content with a guy like, oh, you have Devontae Smith and you have Dallas Goedert. You're fine. That's enough. No, it's not enough. Much like what the Dolphins did. They have Jalen Waddle for Tua. No, go get Tyreek Hill, one of the best receivers in the league. You have Devontae Smith for the Eagles? No, that's not enough. Go get A.J. Brown. Help the development of your quarterback. Howie Roseman has been damn near perfect, other than the Robert Quinn signing, which we're not going to talk about, or trade. Damn near perfect this offseason. It's been incredible, man. Shout out to Howie Roseman.
Yeah, but even in that, like you mentioned, even in that Robert Quinn trade, I can't knock the aggressiveness. We're struggling with edge. We're struggling with pressure in the quarterback. Sure, let's go out and get this guy. But that
You're not going to bat 1,000, There's
exactly
gonna be a miss somewhere.
I'll take 750.
That's fine,
But no, that's the thing. Like you mentioned, two of the biggest points that they were going after this year were, last year they were 31st in sack rate. This year they're second in the league in sacks. Last year they turned the ball, or They forced 16 turnovers, I believe it was. I think we got at least 16 interceptions now. So like addressing weaknesses and going after it that quickly, unbelievable.
And oh, by the way, here's a top 5 pick next year for you as well. After
Exactly.
potentially winning the Super Bowl, having a top 5 pick, the dude's been lights out in the last
Shout
few
out
years.
to the
Really
Saints, man. Shout out to the
yeah,
Saints
thank
for
you.
giving us him and CJ. Just
We
pleasure doing business.
yeah, stole twice, 2 times. We absolutely fleeced them in the trades this offseason.
Exactly. So Eagles got the Giants coming up this week. I believe they opened at 6.5-point favorites on the road. Started 3 road games. I believe 3 divisional games, unless one
Bears
against
are thrown in there too.
Bears. Yep. Okay.
Yeah,
So we'll see
Giants,
what
Bears,
happens
Cowboys.
there. We'll see what happens with that game. I expect another touchdown favorite in that one as well.
Yeah,
But
Justin Fields, he scares you a little bit, but this roster's so much better than the Bears. So.
he's like rookie year Jalen Hurts,
Yeah,
kind of doing some similar stuff. We'll see what
yep,
happens.
definitely.
Maybe doesn't have the arm, but we'll see. But that's going to wrap up our Birds talk today. Obviously, feeling great, 11-1 going into next week against the G-Men. But that's going to shift us to topic number 2 today, and something that absolutely made me jump off my couch yesterday. Phillies. We'll talk a little bit of Phillies now. They go out and they sign shortstop Trea Turner to an 11-year, $300 million deal. So first off, let me just get your initial reaction, because when news like this breaks, I just start saying all kinds of crazy stuff. But let me get your initial reaction right away as that news broke.
Yelling, screaming, stuff I probably don't want to say on this podcast. It was awesome, dude. And it came out of nowhere. Like, you heard the rumors, they really want Turner, they want to get something done quick. But usually you hear something from Jim Salisbury, oh, we're hearing talks, it might get done soon. No, it's bang, just Jeff Passan, Trea Turner signing with the Philadelphia Phillies. I'm ecstatic, man. It's a perfect fit for this baseball team. Yes, it's a long contract, 11 years, $300 million. That helps the AAV. It's going to be what? I think he's making less money than Bryce Harper this
Yeah, it's
season.
like Bryce might be making like 26, 27. I think Trea's making like 27. So they're like
regardless,
pretty much
it's
even.
under $30 million. I think he's the 17th highest paid player in baseball. He will end up being. You could argue Trea Turner's a top 8 player in all of baseball. So yes, this team's going to be ugly in 2030. I don't care about 2030 if you get a World Series out of it. So shout out to Dave Dombrowski. Shout out to John Middleton wanting to spend the money. Shout out to Bryce Harper being assistant GM of the year. But it's a perfect fit, man. It is. It fixes your leadoff spot. You have more contact in the lineup now. It's not just swing and miss stuff. He's one of the best base stealing players in the league. He has been pretty much since he's been in the majors. Has speed, plays really good defense for you. He wants to be here. That's the biggest thing. His wife is, I think, from Jersey. He's from the East Coast, Florida. Friends with Bryce Harper. Perfect fit and a perfect start of this offseason for the Philadelphia Phillies. Just perfect.
Yeah, I said in my little video I posted yesterday, like, this is no disrespect to Xander Bogaerts, no disrespect to Carlos Correa, but like, Trea Turner is literally the perfect for every reason you just laid out. Like, it is absolutely perfect, and it can move. I want to get into kind of like lineup predictions and everything like that, but it just like allows so much more flexibility in the lineup. Obviously, Bryce is going to miss months to start the year probably, so you're going to need some more thump in there. As Trea Turner provides, obviously develop some of that power. Back with Kevin Long, which I think was one of the biggest things. I was really nervous after this year. There was a lot of talk of Dusty Watson leaving. That's his name.
Yeah.
Dusty leaving. And then there's also a lot of talk of Kevin Long getting a lot of managerial looks, interviews. And that was nerve-wracking for me, because he's done wonders for multiple people on the team. Alec Boehm being one, obviously, just every single player up and down.
Brandon Marsh was really good when he came over here. Bryson Stott looked better. Kyle Schwarber, not that you had much worry about him coming into the season, but to hit 50 homers through the playoffs and regular season. Yeah, he's one of the best in the business.
And to convince Kyle to be like, listen, to get that mindset to be a leadoff hitter. Like, he even said when he was with the Nationals, he's like, that's not something I'm good with. When I started being a leadoff hitter, I wasn't even good with, but it's just kind of having that right mentality. So having Kevin Long re-signed for multiple years on a contract extension, I think that's just amazing. Like you said, 11 years, he wants to be here, no trade clause. Like, he took the Bryce Harper route with that contract. Yep. And I think it's just like, people like you say, oh, well, you always want the best player over the right fit. I know we always talk about that with the NFL draft. It's like, you never draft for fit, a la Jalen Reagor. All right, we're done with that regardless. But this is really just a true fit. I think he fits into the locker room perfectly. I think, like you said, with the lineup, I did want to kind of get into that a little bit because obviously Bryce is going to be out a couple months. So let me give you my pre-Bryce coming back lineup, and
Okay.
then let me get yours, and let me see what you would change for this. So I would have Trea Turner leading off at number one. I would have Kyle Schwarber at number two, JT at number three, and then I would have Castellanos, Bohm, Hoskins at 4, 5, 6, and then Stott, Marsh, and then whatever right fielder we sign to play right field, because I think they're going to move Castellanos to DH. Maybe Schwarber at DH. I think they're going to pick up a corner outfielder somewhere to play sometimes. So what do you think of that? And then what changes would you make on that pre-Bryce lineup?
Yeah, so I'll say this. I don't think the Phillies are necessarily done. I do think they realize that, hey, we're not going to have Harper for potentially 3 months of this season. We can't just rely on a Derek Hall. We all loved Derek Hall last season.
Yeah.
The dude batted under 100 when it came to facing lefties last year. I like him. I'm glad. I think he's a really nice bench piece, but that's not someone you can rely on to carry your offense potentially or be a big part of carrying your offense potentially for
Right.
3 months of a season when you're trying to win a World Series. So I don't think they're done. I don't know what kind of player they bring in here, but I do think they add another player for the couple months that Bryce is out. I
Mm-hmm.
like it. The only thing that worries me a little bit is it's pretty right-handed heavy.
Yep. Yep.
So you'll go, and there's not much you can do when you're out without Bryce Harper, but you have JT, Castellanos, Bohm, and Hoskins, four straight righties. I'd maybe throw Schwarber in there potentially. When Bryce gets back, I like Schwarber at the top of the lineup at the
Okay.
two spot. Turner one, Schwarber two. When he's out, I think you might have to rely on him maybe in the three spot or four spot potentially, just for that added pop. And I just want runners on base for Kyle Schwarber. Can we please
Yeah.
have that? How
I
many
think they
solo
said
homers did
30 of
that
his
dude?
homers were solo home
Was
runs
that what it
last year.
was? Which is ridiculous. So I Trea Turner, I think, has to be in the leadoff spot. There's a ton of people that I've seen want Schwarber to stick in the leadoff spot. To me, I want runners on base for Schwarber. And when Harper's out, I want him down in the lineup a little bit to break up that righty heavy lineup. When Harper is back, I want him back up in the two spot, not the one spot, the two spot. But that's the biggest thing. It's flexibility, man. There's so much flexibility with this lineup, with the players that you have. The lineup you gave me, you had what? Hoskins batting sixth. Hoskins
Yeah,
hit 34 homers last year and batted 240.
exactly.
Castellanos was seventh in MVP voting, I believe, 2 years ago. Now he had a
Silver
really down
slugger.
year. Yeah, Silver Slugger had a really down year last year. Need him to bounce back, but it's just so much flexibility, and that's what gets people so excited for this next season. Is this team could potentially be one of the best lineups in baseball without Bryce Harper? Just wait till he gets back.
Yeah. Like I'm absolutely amped up. And like the you mentioned with Reese Hoskins, like I love Reese and he's great at, drawing pitches, getting his right spot, but like he only hits like 230, 240. Having him down at the sixth spot
Yeah,
and
yep,
that power just to clean up everybody on base after that, I absolutely love. I wouldn't mind tinkering with Bohm a little bit higher in the lineup if it moves Schwarber down. You can also tinker with JT in the two hole, but I believe you put a tweet out yesterday about Trea Turner's career stats
yeah,
in the
yeah,
leadoff spot. Like, I feel like I love Schwarber in the leadoff. It just provides that thump. I mean, obviously, World Series leadoff home run. Like he had one in the NLCS too. Like it just gets the juices flowing right away. But like having the table setter, and then also with the rule changes this year, like we can't forget about the bases being bigger. You can only
yep,
throw over twice now. You can't
yep.
just continually throw over. Like Trea Turner could realistically steal 40 or 50 bags if he's on, and then that just opens it up for Schwarber in the two hole. Like he's going to get a lot more probably hard stuff. And even if he doesn't, he's great at drawing walks. And then you have JT or Bryce when he gets back up with two on and no out. It's
Yep.
like that's where it can really get going there. I'm excited about the strides for Bryson Stott. I absolutely love this kid. And I think,
Same.
when you mention like the length of the years, like 11 years, blah, blah, blah. Well, I think right when Trea is starting to deteriorate, right when his glove starts to, his athleticism starts to drain a little bit because, you don't like to think that's going to happen. But when you're 34, 35, it's probably going to happen. Let's just shift Bryson, 28-year-old Bryson, over to shortstop and just move Trea to second. Trea, I believe, could play a very, very solid second base even until his late 30s. Probably don't want it. He'll probably end up at a corner outfield at some point, which is another reason why I liked him a little bit more than Xander and Correa and Dansby, just because he's got that outfield capability as well. I think you just have a built-in plan right away. And I think we're obviously both big fans of Bryson Stott. before Trea Turner got signed, I almost wanted to tinker with him up at the leadoff spot just because I think he has that profile. But having him lower in the lineup is just going to allow for more turnover. I'm hoping for more strides from Brandon Marsh. He was one of my favorite prospects. Coming up, we play in a fantasy dynasty league together, and like I had Brandon Marsh on my team for a little while, and it's his glove. Like you want consistent at bats. Getting consistent at bats is the biggest thing in a while, and he's a Gold Glove caliber center fielder. Pair that with Kevin Long. He was up there with, a guy of Joe Adele, who was an outfield prospect with the Angels, who was the next Mike Trout. Everyone in the Angels outfield system is the next Mike Trout, but he was one of the best. He was the number one prospect in baseball, and Marsh beat him to the majors because he was just playing better. So I think you have a lot of stuff built in. And like you said, just one of the best and deepest lineups in baseball. I read Jason Stark came out with an article today. I was reading that a little bit before we got on, and he was talking to one executive saying, well, it seems like it's really top heavy roster and all this stuff. And I understand a little bit where it's coming from. Like you got 6 guys making $20 million a year. 2 of them are pitchers. So you got 4 guys making 20 million. Bryce and Trea are making 50 something million themselves. But you got these young guys who you're finally starting to develop a franchise who had never developed prospects. You got guys that are finally starting to, and I think deeper in the lineup, if they make any kind of stride, if they're like they were last year, they're fine. But if they get any incrementally times better, it just makes this lineup unreal, like you said, and it just makes it deeper. And, especially with the Mets going out, getting Justin Verlander, the Braves being ridiculous and just signing all their young stars to cheap deals. They're going to be there again. And
so
I know
I'll say this actually, real quick. Sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I don't buy that at all, that rival executive saying that. Last year, I think that absolutely was the case because there were huge question marks about Bohm, huge question marks about the shortstop position in Stott, huge question marks about center field. There's not a ton of question marks right now. Bohm showed great strides last season. Bryson Stott put together so many good at-bats. He can make hard contact at any time. I think he hit a little bit of a rookie wall towards the end of the playoffs there, but that's going to happen. The kid who was his first taste of the majors. I have less questions about Bryson Stott than I did last year. I have less questions about Alec Bohm than I did last year. Even Brandon Marsh. So this is from the good fight. Brandon Marsh played 93 games with the Angels last year, 41 with the Phillies. His average raised from 226 to 288 with the Phillies, and then his OBP 284 to 319 for when he was with the Phillies. I'm not asking him to hit 280 or whatever, but if this dude can hit 260, give you Gold Glove defense, 10 homers, 10 steals, I think there's a lot less questions. And I actually disagree, not with Stark, but the guy that said that. I don't think this is a top-heavy roster. I really don't. Last year, I believe that was the case. I don't believe that's the case at all this year, personally.
Yeah, and when you talk about top, you're also talking about some of the best players in the league, JT Realmuto, all MLB first catcher or first team catcher. Trea Turner, I'm pretty sure he was first team shortstop. If he wasn't first team, he was second team all MLB shortstop.
And he was top 5 MVP voting last year, Trea Turner.
Exactly. Kyle Schwarber, all MLB second team left fielder, or whatever the case may be. Bryce Harper, I can't believe he didn't get an all MLB DH role, but he didn't play all that year. So I'll cut him some slack on that one. But the players who you have are so good right now. And kind of, I guess, as we kind of wrap up our discussion here, getting back to kind of, I guess, some question marks with the deal, because we're all obviously so excited about it. The length and kind of how that works. It's you said it. I don't care about 2030 right now. I am worried about right now. We just want a freaking pennant for my God. Your time is right now. I know the NL East is really strong. Obviously, the Dodgers are ridiculous. But you just proved that you can make it there. And all you have to do is get in. They got to the World Series with 87 wins. So I just kind of I just wanted to reiterate that point, because I think it's so important when you're talking about, 11 years, blah, blah, blah. I got texts. I got a couple texts from some of my buddies yesterday, just 11 years, you're going to play this guy when he's 40. I'm like, dude, it is 2022. It's about to be 2023 and we're talking about 2030. So it's just I think it's phenomenal. Now, let me ask you this, as we kind of wrap up our conversation here, what do you think still needs to be accomplished for the Phils as they finish up, rounding out this roster?
Bullpen definitely needs help. I like what I saw last year from Sir Anthony Dominguez. I was the biggest Jose Alvarado hater alive for most of last season. When he got back, when he sent down to AAA, when he got back up, he was one of your best relievers, if not your best reliever. So he showed strides last season, adding that cutter to his repertoire. Excuse me. Connor Brogdon, I still think there's some life there. I think he hit a little bit of a wall. I don't think he was completely healthy early in the season. He was better in the playoffs for you. I think there's something there. Bullpen needs to be added, needs to be amped up. I think it's just going to be like 1 or 2 year deals, kind of like the Brad Hand and Juris Familia signings. Hopefully not the same results, but like 1 year, 6 mil, 2 years, 11 mil, something like that. Nothing big. I don't think they go crazy with like a closer or anything.
Mm-hmm.
Starting pitching needs to be addressed. You need an upgrade of Noah Syndergaard starting in Game 4 of the World Series. That needs to be better. I think
Yep.
you need to do a little bit better than a guy like Jamison Taillon, who I like, but I think he's kind of similar to Syndergaard. I'm not in love with him. I wouldn't shock me if they signed him. I'd be okay with it, but I think they potentially look at the trade market for an arm. Now that you've gone all in, and you have gone all in, this team's window is realistically 3 to 4 seasons to win a World Series. After
Yep.
that, Harper's 34, Trey Turner's 34, Schwarber's 35. Like, you're not winning anything with $100 million of your lineup going to 35-year-old players, 34-year-old players. So you have a 4-year window here. I'm not trading Painter. Anyone other than that is on the table for me to get a top-tier arm. I don't know if it happens. It's probably going to end up being a guy like Taillon, but I hope Dombrowski at least considers looking at the trade market for one of these top-tier pitchers to try and just push your chips in even further.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think pitching is definitely the number one thing. I'm amped up for Andrew Painter. I know
Yeah.
obviously if you could trade him for a stud guy, you probably would, but I mean he just won minor league pitcher of the year, so I'd be much more likely to move off a guy like Mick Abel or Griff McGarry before
Yep.
I'm moving off a guy that has that kind of resume behind him. But like you said, I totally agree. I think Sir Anthony might be one of my favorite players just on the Phillies team in general. I think he's got the nastiest stuff in the bigs, honestly. So he's right there. But like you said, I think it's bullpen. I think it's starting rotation, and hopefully they're contending for another pennant next year. So that's gonna wrap up our Phil's talk on this episode, and that is going to do it for the show today. Once again, check the description for all our social media handles. You can find mine and Tom's as well. Tom, thank you for jumping on the show. Always appreciate it. Always
Thanks for
welcome.
having me, man. Absolutely.
Of course. Thank you guys for checking it out, and we will see you back here again next time.